Most owner-led teams don't struggle because of talent. They struggle because too much of the important work routes through their own hands and brains. You get work back and it's close enough to look done, not close enough to be right. So you either redo it, re-explain it, or fix it at 10 p.m. yourself because you refuse to put out something that's not up to your standards. And now you're paying for the same work twice, once for them, once for you. This is the pattern I'm going to explain and fix in today's video. This video is about the owner bottleneck, when your team is capable, but despite everyone's best intentions, they wait on you for decisions, directions, or quality control. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, my bandwidth is what's slowing us down, you're in the right place. In this video, I'm going to do 3 things. First, help you accurately diagnose what's happening when you're the bottleneck. Then explain why the usual delegation advice hasn't worked. And finally, walk you through a clean, simple framework that fixes owner bottlenecks without lowering standards or adding bureaucracy. It is a full plan for how to stop being the helicopter in chief of your own business. A lot of service businesses grow up with the owner touching everything. Decisions get made on the fly, guidance happens during discussions but not in documents, and everything stays fluid. And that works for a while. But the habits that helped you move fast early on can quietly harden into bottlenecks. And without realizing it, the business starts to depend on your proximity, your presence, and your preferences in ways that are really hard to unwind. And when the systems are designed around one person's brain, one person's judgment, they're hard to maintain and even harder to scale on. Meanwhile, you are straddling at least 3 or 4 jobs and doing none of them well. Context switching is frying you, and you end most weeks feeling like you worked your butt off but didn't move anything forward. You've probably tried to get out of this mess before and it didn't stick. But here's who I am and why my approach is different. I'm Karen Sargent. I fix owner bottlenecks and help you delegate in ways that actually stick. Earlier in my career, I worked in places where clarity wasn't optional. I was a product manager at Intuit during the dot-com boom of the 90s, and then I moved into CIA counterterrorism operations after September 11th, including time in a war zone. Both roles trained me to create alignment under pressure and keep teams focused when the stakes are high and the constraints are real. And now I bring that operating discipline to owner-led teams who need decisions and momentum to stop bottlenecking at the top. If your business only moves as fast as you do, that is a solvable problem. So what's really going on? Let's dig into this and define this cleanly. An owner bottleneck is when decisions, daily direction, and quality standards route through one person, you. And the cost is reworked, drop balls, and a team that stops taking initiative because it's safer to ask, and an owner who can't get out of the weeds long enough to work on the big stuff. The symptoms usually look like this. Quality depends on your eyeballs. Work always goes to you for approval, and you are constantly fixing what you get. Momentum depends on your constant attention, and decisions, large and small, will stack up until you weigh in. You're straddling too many jobs. Clients and team management fight for the same bandwidth, and high-level goal setting gets pushed off until tomorrow. And let's be clear, your team is full of capable people. You're not struggling because of talent. The root cause is simpler than you think. Your standards are still in your head, and your team can't see what you're seeing. People can do tasks, but they can't reliably make the decisions that you would make if you weren't in the room. So this isn't a tools problem. It's not even primarily a documentation problem. It's an owner-hero problem where the business still relies on owner heroics to keep things moving. Now, this isn't a personal failing. In fact, it's the hallmark of a tiny, scrappy business. It's how your business earned success when you were just starting out. The problem is that what once made your business nimble and scrappy now makes it fragile. If you've tried to fix this before, you've probably been told that the fix is to delegate. And I'm here to say that advice is absolutely right. But if you're still here watching, you already know that it's not that simple. The popular playbooks that are out there are all shopping what I call the 5 false fixes. Delegate everything that's not in your genius zone so that you stay aligned with the work that you're meant to do. 2, ask your team to step up, take ownership, so that you'll truly be free of the 1,001 decisions that cut up your week. SOP everything, so your team knows what to do. That advice tries to cover the what, the who, and the how, but it actually skips what's tricky about delegation. There are also fixes that over-index on hiring or turning over your team, or they'll throw a business tool at you like EOS or OKRs, which are excellent tools, by the way, but they do not solve the underlying problem that we're talking about. And look, none of these false fixes are irrational. Delegating more makes sense. SOPs can make sense. Even replacing a team member can make sense. But here's what you're probably seeing when you try these tactics. Work still boomerangs back to you. The team still waits on you for the final call. Quick questions run your week. Deliverables come back and always need adjusting. You can't stop watching the work, and growth feels risky because everything still depends on your proximity. But here's the pattern. Those aren't 6 different problems. They're all symptoms of one thing that's missing. They're all trying to solve a handoff problem without building the handoff blueprint. Delegation isn't a single act. It is a built system. So what's actually missing are key parts of the handoff that make delegation stick. When delegation fails, it's usually one or more of these things. The handoff is delegated at the wrong level. The work is handed to someone who isn't set up to own it at that level. There aren't clear goalposts for what done looks like. Decision rights are muddy, so everything stalls or gets guessed at. The owner keeps swooping in to rescue work, so the system never stands on its own. This is the pattern behind the pattern. These 5 things are the missing handoff blueprint, and they are the magic behind making your delegation system work. And they are the not-so-secret reason that you were not seeing success when you tried this before. I'm going to give you what you need to build your own handoff blueprint. I call it the bottleneck to bandwidth blueprint. Let's dig in. Step 1 is name the level of the handoff. So obviously, we start by identifying what it is you want to move off your plate to someone else. And then we ask a question that a lot of people skip. At what level is this handoff? Is it a task, a project, an outcome, or a business goal? And here's what I mean by those in plain language. A task is a specific scoped action or a series of them. A project is larger, but still well-defined deliverable that you're expecting them to break down themselves and organize into tasks. And an outcome is a result where a person has broader decision-making latitude about the approach they're going to take and can problem solve their way through a longer, more involved process without requiring you to keep weighing in. And then a business goal, it's a very high-level goal or a novel challenge with lots of moving parts. This is when significant chunks of the business fall under someone else and you just trust them to handle it. This taxonomy matters because when delegation breaks, it breaks differently depending on which level you're handing off. If you don't name the level, you can't diagnose why things keep coming back to you. And once you do, everything else in this framework gets sharper. So step 1 is just the diagnosis. Name the level. That's it. Step 2 is to match the level to the right person. Okay, you have the ideal level for your handoff. It's a task, a project, an outcome, or a business goal. Now here's the thing. Most team members will thrive handling just 1 or 2 of these, not all 4. Some people thrive doing repetitive, high-quality work at volume as long as things are dialed in. Their genius is focus and consistency, but they are not scanning the horizon for icebergs. That's just the nature of their particular expertise. And then other team members thrive on designing systems or spotting patterns or making trade-offs, but they will fatigue out fast if you give them highly repetitive work, and they'll get bored or sloppy if everything is the same. So everyone has their own shape to what level they thrive in and what they struggle with. Now, what makes this especially tricky in small but scrappy teams is that everyone wears multiple hats, and it can often be that assigned work spans almost all 3 or 4 of these levels. But remember, they only truly thrive in 1 or 2. Here's why this matters. Delegation fails when there is a mismatch between the level of work you're handing off and the person you're handing it off to. Most advice assumes these are automatically aligned. They're not. And I can tell you, after a decade helping owners unpack this problem, this is the piece that often goes wrong. It is the number 1 source of frustration for owners and for team members. And when we finally name it, it's usually one of the biggest ahas. Let me give you an example of what this looks like in the real world. One of my clients was a founder-led services firm with a GM, a small core team, and then a wider bench of contractors. And despite earnest attempts at delegation, the founder was still in the daily work. The dominant issue was not effort or skill. It was a leadership seat that was operating at the wrong level. What I discovered was that the GM role was operating like a project coordinator who tackled a list of meetings and updates and reports, But what the business needed was outcome ownership, a GM who would make decisions, make trade-offs, and drive results without the founder constantly re-engaging. And here's the moment the mismatch became obvious. The GM had been tasked with improving sales conversions. So she arranged training and mentoring to make that happen. But the next month's conversion percentage actually dropped instead of improving. And when she reported the number, her explanation was, well, the lead source mix had changed month to month. And so we saw the corresponding change in conversions. Technically true, but that is the wrong level of answer. That's a variance explanation. It's analysis. An outcome owner's answer is, here's what's working, here's what's not, here's what we're changing next, here's what we expect to see by when. Do you see the difference? If your GM can only explain the number, you're still the one who has to manage the number. So we realigned the seat to the correct level of work. We clarified the outcomes that the role owned, what decisions it owned. We set the goalposts that matched the level. So it wasn't do some training, it was own the result, choose the approach, change it up based on what you see. And that created clarity for everyone. Now, the current GM looked at the actual level of responsibility we were asking for and chose to exit gracefully, not because she was unskilled, but because it wasn't the kind of work she wanted to own or the kind of seat where she would thrive. That is a win because you don't inspire mismatches into becoming the right fit. You either redesign the seat to match the person or you find the person who actually wants that level of ownership. So when that seat turned over, the new GM started carrying the load that the business required. Execution got more predictable and fewer decisions boomeranged back to the founder. So the moral of the story is, if you delegate an outcome level responsibility into a seat that's functioning at a task or analyst level, you won't get true delegation. You'll get updates, and you will stay the bottleneck. Name the level, match it to the right person. Steps 1 and 2. All right, step 3. Step 3 is set the goalposts. Telling someone what to do without telling them what winning looks like is a guaranteed way to get work that misses the mark. Remember, delegation means you're saying, get to done without me. So you need to define what done actually looks like and to surface the standards and constraints that matter. Here's the nuance, though. Your definition of done has to match the level of the handoff. Done for a task is different than done for a project and an outcome or a business goal. It will define some things down, but let other things shake out. And that blend will be different depending on the level. And when you define done, you're really defining done well. The quality bar, the success criteria, the stuff that makes you say yes without having to tinker with it. And you should assume you won't get this perfect on day one. Most owners have a web of requirements they don't realize that they're silently carrying. It'll take a few iterations for you to describe goalposts well. You'll hand it off, you'll see what comes back, you'll notice a hidden standard that you didn't say out loud, you'll tighten the goalposts, and then you'll try again. That's not failure, that's just you converting invisible standards into visible ones. Here is a real-world example. My client ran a high-end B2C services firm, white glove work, wealthy clientele. The owner made a strategic hire, which was a very senior pro, very experienced, specifically so she wouldn't have to train or babysit. And in 30 days in, I got the call from my client that the new hire was not hitting the company standards for project timing, which was a key part of the client experience of the brand. I asked for details about the standard, and I learned that the standard actually hadn't been formally communicated to the new hire. And let me pause here a second in case you're thinking that would never happen on your team. It happens everywhere. On every team I have ever worked with. Silent standards are everywhere. So the owner was evaluating the new hire's performance against that timetable without ever telling her the timetable existed. The owner was seeing it as an accountability problem, when the reality was it was a clairvoyance problem. It was a hidden success metric. The minute the owner briefed her on the timetable, the performance issue cleared up. So the moral of the story is, if you're using it to judge somebody's performance, it needs to be spoken out loud. And by the way, hiring a senior person does not remove the need for goalposts. It just changes what kind of goalposts you need. Set the goalposts, step 3. Step 4 is setting the decision boundaries for the work. This is the piece that most owners skip entirely, and it is arguably the highest leverage single change you can make. If you are delegating a project or hire, the person you're handing it to will be making decisions. That's the whole point. You're asking them to get to done without you. So you need to clarify how much decision latitude they have and any constraints they need to know about to handle all of the smaller decisions that will get made on the road to done. Otherwise, they have two bad options. Either they stop and ask you about everything, or they guess. And nobody wants either of those to happen. When decision rights are muddy, that's when the quick questions crop up. That's why your Slack is a decision hotline. It's not because your team can't think. It's because they don't know where the lines are. So they ask approval at every turn. So you need to answer the questions, what can they decide on their own? What should they loop you in on? And what's still yours alone to decide? Drawing these decision boundaries is your delegation contract, not a legal contract, just a shared, explicit agreement about what decisions are theirs and what's off limits without a check-in. Once those boundaries exist alongside the goalposts, you're set up for step 5 because now you can supervise the system without taking the work back. Step 5 is supervise without swooping. This is the habit change step because once you've aligned the handoff and set the goalposts, the next temptation is the old one. You see something drifting and you jump in. You rewrite it, you fix it, you take it back. In the moment, it feels efficient. But now you've promoted yourself back to bottleneck, and it signals to the team that ownership is conditional. It's going to get pulled back in a moment. You don't go rescue the work. You fix the system. You adjust the goalposts. You clarify the decision boundary. You correct the handoff level. You coach the person on how to use the goalposts without taking the work back. Here's what that looks like in the real world. This was a founder-led business with a COO and a small leadership team. High-performing, high standards, not on fire. They weren't calling me because things were broken. They called because they knew the business could run cleaner and get even more done if we removed the founder as the bottleneck. And the founder was incredibly self-aware about the problem. She was a self-declared swooper. Not because she didn't trust people. It was an over-functioning habit, like muscle memory from when it was just her. Her business had grown, but her operating mode hadn't caught up. The moment something felt off track, she'd jump in, tighten the work, rewrite the thing. And so we treated swooping like a pattern to interrupt and not a moral failing. I asked her to keep a log with, I call it my swooper tracker. It's a short form to fill out every time she swooped or felt the impulse to. She'd log the trigger, the risk she was feeling, the standard she thought she was protecting, and how she could show up differently without taking the work back. And after a few weeks, the pattern was undeniable. The swoops were not responses to actual problems. It was just itchy fingers. Once she could see the trigger map, she could choose differently. Her team got to own the work, and she got to stop doing a job that she already paid somebody else to do. And the result was a complete leadership shift. She started operating like a CEO instead of the emergency fixer. And delegation got real because the systems were finally allowed to stand on their own. And the moral of this story is, if you want delegation to stick, you have to supervise the system without rescuing the work. Otherwise, you'll just keep reteaching everyone that you are the final path to done. And that is the full blueprint. It is a built system, a blueprint that fixes each delegation pain point and gets you on your way to removing yourself as the bottleneck in your business. Now, if you're thinking, I've tried delegating before and it didn't work, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means you tried delegation without the infrastructure that makes it stick. Most owners do. That's why this video exists. Let me show you what this looks like when it starts working, though. Your week stops being run by quick questions. Work stops boomeranging back to you. Quality gets more predictable without you policing it. Work moves faster because your team isn't waiting on you. And growth stops feeling like a threat because you are no longer the hub in every single wheel of your business. And that is the move from bottleneck to bandwidth. The framework itself is straightforward, but here's what I'll tell you from a decade of doing this work. The hard part isn't understanding the steps. It's seeing your own blind spots. It's the silent standard you don't realize you're carrying. It's the mismatch that you've been rationalizing for the last 6 months. It's the swoop you don't even notice that you're doing. That's what a second set of eyes is for. You can take every step I just walked you through and still get a little stuck. Not because the framework doesn't work, it's because you're inside the system that you're trying to diagnose. And you've been adapting to your own bottlenecks for so long that most of them have become invisible. You've normalized them. I've been solving this specific problem long enough that I know what I'm looking for before most owners can name it. Most owners I work with come in thinking they have a people problem, but what they actually have is a system that was never built for anyone else but them to run. That is a solvable problem. But you need someone from the outside to see it clearly. If you would like some help applying this framework quickly and cleanly so you don't spend the next 2 months tinkering and second guessing, please book a call with me. You bring the bottleneck, I'll ask the questions that tell us whether this is a problem I can help solve, and if it is, we'll get started. Your team is ready, you are ready, let's get this thing going. Talk soon.